Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Tony, thank you very much for being here again. I just remember that your first webinar for Descomplicando was exactly a year ago, October last year. So thank you for being here again. And we have Martin also. So my name is Bruna Marques. I'm the founder and director of Descomplicando Inglês Jurídico. Let me just do something here, okay? Otherwise, I'll keep here listening to myself. So we are here today because I took the Summer Institute course at Fordham back in 2018, and the program was fantastic. And since then, I keep in touch with Tony and the university. As a lawyer, I think it's the dream of, 90% of lawyers in Brazil to take a LL.M in the US. But it was really expensive, and at least at Fordham, you have to spend an entire year in New York City. So the cost just added up, right? So, of course, it's amazing to live in New York. Who wouldn't love it? But the cost was really high, and also not everybody can move to New York for a year, right? So a month or 2 months ago, I heard that Fordham now has an 100% online LL.M program. And I was really excited about it. And I thought that my colleagues would enjoy hearing about the program, how it works, how much it costs, and etc. So that's why I have invited Tony and Martin. So they're here today to tell us a little bit more about this amazing program. And tomorrow I'll send you guys the recording so you can watch again, or you can send the recording to your colleagues, and also with more information on the program. So let me start by introducing Tony. She has done a lot of things. She still does a lot of things. So I'll read her bio, and then Tony will talk to us, and then she'll introduce us to Martin. So Tony Ager-Fine is an assistant dean of international and non-JD programs at Fordham Law School in New York. She has taught or lectured domestically and in Argentina, Brazil, China, and many other countries. Dean Ager-Fine, I'm sorry, I always mispronounce your middle name.
It's perfect.
Is the author of numerous articles. Sorry?
It's perfect.
Thank you. So Tony's the author of numerous articles on a wide range of topics published in the US and abroad, as well as several books. Becoming a lawyer, discovering and defining your first professional persona. By the way, she was on a webinar with us last year talking about this book. So just go to our channel and then you'll find her webinar. Other books, American Legal Systems, a resource and reference guides, and other books. Tony blogs online at yourprofessionalpersona.com, or highly recommend her blog. She's a regular speaker to delegations hosted by the U.S. Department of State, senior counselor to the international section of the Federal Bar Association, and an application reader for the Schwartzman Scholar Program. So this is a little bit about what Tony has done, and she's also an attorney, and she worked as an attorney for a few years. So Tony and Martin, thank you very much again. You guys that are watching us live on YouTube, feel free to ask questions on our chat, and then after Tony and Martin are done, I'll go back to our chat and then read your questions, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them.
Bruna, thank you so much. It's becoming very familiar for me to work with you, Bruna, since you came to the Fordham Law Summer Institute program a few years ago. We've stayed in touch as friends, but also as colleagues, and it's such an honor for me to have the chance to chat with you through Descomplicando. I can't pronounce the whole name of your company, but you do amazing, amazing work. And I've met so many wonderful people through this program. So I want to thank you so much. I'm going to ask Marty to share a screen. We've prepared a PowerPoint for all of you. But in the meantime, I do want to say that Bruna's comments were really terrific in terms of why an online LLM program might make sense. Marty, you could share anytime, partly because, you know, with this COVID thing, it's become really complicated for people to come to New York. But even beyond COVID, we realize that people have careers and lives and other things. And so we know that for many people, it's just not possible to come to New York for a year. And so we now have this brand new option. So great, Marty, let's go to the next slide. And I want to give you some basic information about the LLM program, again, with a focus on the online program. We also have in-person LLM programs. We're not going to focus on that now, but if anybody does want information about that, we're going to give you some resources later. You can begin the LLM, the online LLM, either in August, that's called the fall semester, or in January, the spring semester. It's all very complicated, and then when you include the Southern Hemisphere perspective, it gets very, very complicated, because when you come to New York in January, it does not feel like spring yet. But this January will be the first semester that we're offering the online LLM program. And I'm hoping that some of you will be new students in this brand new program. It takes 2 semesters of full-time study to complete the program, but you can have up to or even more than 3 years. And so we normally say you should have completed the program by 3 years. But one thing you'll find about Fordham Law School is that we're very flexible. And if you're working, you have family commitments, and you tell us I need a 4th year to complete the program, we can make that happen. So you can finish it in as little as 2 semesters or as many as 3 or 4 years. Our application deadlines are somewhat flexible. They're a little more flexible for the online LLM program than they are for the in-person program, because you don't need a visa, obviously, to study in the online program. So if you are thinking about the January start, you should apply by December 1st. We'd love it if you applied sooner. If you apply a week or so after that, we're going to work very, very hard to make that happen for you regardless. The eligibility requirement, and my colleague Marty is going to talk much more about the admissions process later. You do need a first degree in law. We do have an online program. It's a very specialized program for anyone that might be on this, listening to this webinar, that does not have a degree in law. And we have some other programs, but for the LLM, you do need a first degree in law. There is one very important limitation on the online LLM program that I have to tell you, and this is very important. When you come to New York, or when you come to the US and do a residential LLM, a traditional LLM, the kind that Bruna was talking before, you spend the year in New York or in another city, you can generally gain eligibility to sit for the New York bar exam. That is not the case with the online LLM. And so we want to be very, very clear that everyone understands that if their goal is to sit for the New York bar exam, then they must do a residential program. And again, we can answer questions about that later. Marty, let's go on to the next slide. The curriculum is recently created, and the curriculum will expand over time. But here are the courses that we're starting with. Introduction to US law and process, legal research and writing, contract law and drafting, dispute resolution in the United States, corporate governance, privacy and information technology law, blockchain, cryptocurrency and digital assets, corporate social responsibility, US competition law in global perspective, which is actually going to be taught by a guy named Amedeo Rivero. Some of you may have heard of him, maybe not, but you've heard of his firm. He's at Matos Filho, and he's the partner in charge of the New York office of Matos Filho. He's a Fordham LLM graduate, and he's going to be teaching US competition law in global perspective, US and cross-border insolvency law. And I apologize, I have one course listed twice. We're going to add some additional electives to the program as the program grows. But for those of you who would think about starting the program, this year, early in 2021, later in 2021, this is basically the curriculum. Thank you, Marty. Let's go on to the next slide. And actually, this is a good point for me to introduce Marty Slavin. So I'm not prepared to give as comprehensive a introduction to Marty as Bruna gave for me, other than to say that Marty is my colleague, my very, very close colleague, and my very close friend. He and I both have studied abroad. I studied in Spain when I was 20 years old. Marty studied in China and actually is fluent in Mandarin, which is something that is beyond my even imagination. Marty is also the gateway to the LL.M program because he's the director of admissions. And so everybody who comes to Fordham has to work through Marty, and Marty is incredibly patient in terms of answering the many questions you may have. He's going to go through the basic application materials and how this works. And he's going to give you also a tip for applying in a more streamlined way to our online or in-person LL.M program. So Marty, thank you. I pass it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Tony. And really grateful to be here, Bruna, and be part of this and to share with you this really exciting new online LL.M from Fordham Law School. So one thing that I wanted just to say at the start is that as you are considering submitting your application or as you begin the application, you can reach out to me directly. And I will be working with you throughout the admissions process and answering your questions and available to help really in any way. So the materials you need for the application are pretty straightforward. You fill out the application form, and that's going to be available in LSAC, or there's also a direct application that I'll talk about in just a bit. You upload to that form your resume or CV, and also your personal statement. And then you arrange to send in your transcripts from all higher education, 2 letters of recommendation, and then a TOEFL, IELTS, or a Duolingo English score. The TOEFL and IELTS are both available online. As an alternative format. The Duolingo English test is entirely online. And so that's pretty convenient if you're sending us your score there. For the transcripts, we do ask for official copies. And so that means that you will be submitting your transcripts through LSAC and having official copies sent in. If you're having any difficulty, especially sometimes, during these last few months, I've been having applicants reach out and ask about ways to get me maybe an unofficial copy of your transcript. So if you're applying for spring and it's a little bit tight in terms of trying to get a hold of these transcripts, let me know and we can use unofficial copies while we wait for your official copies. And then for letters of recommendation through LSAC, these can be done electronically, and so your recommenders will simply upload them to LSAC. And I think now is a good time to talk a little bit about the streamline process. So I do have a direct application form, and if that's easier for you, you can send me an email to LLM@law.fordham.edu, and I can send you a link to that form. And if you're applying directly, instead of using LSAC, then you'll upload your resume and personal statement to that form, and then arrange to send in your transcripts and letters of recommendation, your TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo score directly to me. And I'll have instructions on how to do that, and also some alternatives to make it a little bit easier if you're rushed in the email with the link. A couple of other just quick points for the personal statement. You'll see on our admissions website, and when we talk about the personal statement, that you're asked to tell us about where you want to be practicing, what you see yourself doing in 5 years' time. And really what we want you to do is to connect your reasons for doing the LLM with your career goals. And so you can just tell us a little bit about your plans, but also how you see the LLM in being instrumental or helpful to those plans. It's a 500-word personal statement. There is some flexibility, so if you're just a little bit over, that's fine. For letters of recommendation, you can use your law school faculty. That's always great. People who know you well and can really speak to your skills. If you have been working and if you don't have a faculty member that you want to use, then you're welcome to use a professional reference as well, but it should be somebody who has really overseen your work and can speak to your skills and your ability to do well in the academic program. So our cost of attendance for the online LLM program, the tuition is here. And there are also some fees that are assessed for the full-time program. That's the full amount of fees that are assessed. Part-time students pay per credit. And so the per credit rate, when you multiply that by the required number of credits, which is 24, you come out to roughly the same amount as the full-time tuition. But with the part-time program, you're doing that over 3 or 4 semesters. And then the student fees are per year. We do have some merit-based scholarships that are available. And so when you submit your application, you can request to be considered for one of our graduate student scholarships. And then you'll hear about that at the same time admissions decision.
Marty, could I just say a word about the scholarships
Sure.
before we go on? And so I know that, as Bruna said before, it's really expensive to study in the US. It's that much more expensive when you also have to pay to live in New York. But we recognize that this is an expensive proposition, and for many of you may not be easy. And as Marty said, scholarships are available both through Fordham, and perhaps there are other resources you can check with your local U.S. embassy if you're near Brasilia, or consulate if you're in another city, because they're very good at knowing sort of what kinds of scholarships are available for Brazilian students. But I do want to say that as we're starting off this program, our ability to be able to give scholarships is going to be, we're going to be able to be more generous in this first semester, and maybe in the first 2 semesters than we'll be able to be when the program gets bigger and more established. And so if you're in a position to be thinking about starting the LLM this January or even next August, and if money is an issue, thinking about starting sooner rather than later is going to be very advantageous for scholarship consideration, because it's typical what we do as we begin a new program and the word is not fully out yet and it's not an established program yet. We have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the scholarships that we can award. Thank you, Marty. And I think the next slide, we're really done with our formal presentation, other than I wanted to tell you a few words about some other online programs that we offer. There is an online LLM in corporate compliance. So we've been talking about the online LLM in US law. I explained the curriculum to you. The curriculum is really designed to give you both a solid understanding of the basics of US law, introduction to the US legal system, contract law, dispute resolution, technology and privacy, and then to give you some more sort of exotic cutting edge courses like corporate social responsibility, blockchain, cryptocurrency, digital assets, US and global competition law, US and global insolvency law. And so it's a nice little mix. But for those of you who are very focused on corporate compliance, we do have an online LLM in corporate compliance as well. That program offers even a little bit more flexibility than the US law program, because you could begin in January or August or also in May. We have a Legal English Institute, which is a pretty much full semester program. The next intake will start in January. It will go through May. And it does a lot of, I think, what Descomplicando tries to do. Sorry, my Portuguese is so bad. An introduction to U.S. law, an introduction to the U.S. legal system with a focus on legal English training. And so it's a great initial program for those of you who are thinking of doing an LL.M later. It's also a great standalone program if you're interested just in a one semester program. Marty and I both teach in that. I also teach in the LL.M program. And we have a summer institute. And I have to say, I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be online next year, but it seems likely that that may happen. And this is the program that Bruna attended, and she attended in person. Obviously, we'll be making some adjustments to that program if it's online. What it does, it's a 3-week program. It may be a little longer if we do it online because we may not have classes every morning and afternoon, but maybe just mornings. It's an introduction to the U.S. legal system and various aspects of U.S. law. And we include some visits. So we'll do, whether it's in person or online, we'll do visits to law firms, to a court, maybe to an NGO. Maybe we'll have someone from the United Nations talk to us. And again, we're still unsure whether we're going to do that online, but it looks increasingly likely that we probably will. So I wanted to mention that to you all now. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the end of our formal presentation, other than to be sure that you have this information that you can use to contact us if you have additional questions.
And I'll send all this information tomorrow with the recording, so all your email addresses and everything. May I ask you some questions?
Please.
Okay, so let me just make sure people, okay, everything is good on YouTube, but okay. For this online LL.M, will all the classes be live?
That's a great question, and I should have mentioned that. If I had a piece of paper, I'd write this down to make sure I mention it the next time I do this presentation. The classes will largely be live. At this point, we know that there will be some asynchronous content for at least 2 of the courses, but they will be live. And Bruna, your question makes me think of another incredibly important question, which is, when will they be?
Exactly.
They'll be in the morning. They'll be in the morning. Okay, so they'll be in the morning, New York time, starting, depending on the class, somewhere between 9 and 10 in the morning. So you would need to be available. I believe there's, at most times of the year, there's an hour difference between New York and most of Brazil. So you need to be available in the mornings. I'm so glad you asked that. I know that for 2 courses, at least next semester, we're going to have some asynchronous material, but you will need to be free mornings, most weeks, Monday through Thursday. Thank you for that question that I somehow forgot to include.
Thank you. And how long are the classes? Usually an hour, 2 hours every day?
Yeah, it's going to be between 2 and 3 hours. So some courses are 2 credits, which means it will meet 2 hours a week. Some courses are 3 or 4, and then my course is 4 hours, but because I have asynchronous content, we're going to meet for 3 hours. You know, again, to the extent that that instructors do have asynchronous content, they're probably going to have even a little bit of a shorter class time synchronously, but it will be between 2 and 3 hours per week. Each day, excuse me.
Okay,
Thank you.
So what people must be thinking is, okay, but it's online, but will I be able to ask the professors questions? How does it work? Because when people come and ask about our courses at Descomplicando, that's one of the first questions they ask us, right? So
that's a great question too. And I have to say, if you'd asked me this 4 months ago, I'm not sure how I would have answered it. But in the last months, I've been teaching a lot online. Marty's been teaching online. We use Zoom and we use a learning management system. There are 2 that we use in the law school. And they're actually, you know, I was one of these people that was terrified of teaching online, partly because I love teaching in person. I love walking through the classroom. I love getting to know my students, but also because the technology frightened me. I'm not young and I'm not that comfortable with technology. I have to say it's all very simple, but more importantly than that, it's in a way more intimate than being in a classroom, because we all see our names, we all see our faces. We've been using mechanisms like polling in class, breakout groups.
Right.
And we're also very mindful of what you said, Bruna, about this is just weird, right? How is it going to work? I've been doing coffees and lunches with students so that I make sure that I get to know them in smaller groups. You know,
Right.
the LLM, the online LLM will be very small in the beginning. And so if you want sort of an intimate relationship with your classmates and your instructor, now is certainly the time. But I think down the road, no matter how big this program grows, we're going to limit section size to 20 or perhaps 25 at the most for that exact reason. You know, we would never have, I don't know, I couldn't imagine, but if you had 100 people in the online LLM, you know, we're not going to have 5 screens of people. That's just not something that we feel good about. So we're going to keep sections at 20 to 25, something like that.
Excellent. And I have more classes here. Okay. So I took, as I said previously, the Summer Institute course in 2018, and it was amazing. The experience, I made a lot of friends, and we really can feel the energy of the professors and etc. And of course, being in New York is amazing. But a lot of lawyers, a lot of colleagues have told me, Bruna, I'd love to take this course, but I cannot leave for a month, and I have children and I have my job. And so I want to congratulate you guys. You said, Tony, that you're not 100% sure that it will be online next year. But if it is, I highly recommend it, because it's, you know, it's a really great opportunity for us Brazilian lawyers to have classes with American lawyers, you know, from a university, one of the best universities in the state. So it's different from, you know, Martin and Tony. I had a student once, and she traveled to the States, and she went and she stayed there. I don't remember where now, but for 1 or 2 months. So she paid a lot of money to learn legal English in the States. And in the end of the day, she ended up in a language school, and the teacher was not even a lawyer. So all he did was like read this part of the Constitution and fill in the blanks. And like my experience was completely different. So I can say that the Summer Institute at Fordham is amazing. So if you guys do decide to have an online version, it'll be amazing. And maybe I can take it again online.
Thank you, Bruna. I was just thinking, you know, we would probably shake things up a bit. And, you know, we're thinking also, we're not 100% sure. There's so many things to think about. But if we do keep it, if we do make it online in 2021, we're thinking of sort of merging it with a class, with a group of US students, so that
that
the
would be
international
amazing.
students, yeah, and I think the international students will benefit from meeting the American students, the US students, and I think the US students will love meeting you, because, you know, I'll say, Bruno, when I was in law school, I didn't know what civil law was. I didn't know that there was another legal system. I had no idea. So I think students today are more sophisticated on both sides, but for common law lawyers to meet civil law lawyers and learn from each other, you know, I think a big part of the benefit of a program like this is to understand a little bit the US mind, the US legal mind.
Exactly. Yep.
So we're thinking of having some elements of the program that would be just for the international students, but also mixing them for some classes. And we're pretty excited about that prospect. So
it would be brilliant, especially, and when we study law in Brazil, we don't study the common law system either. And I had, like, when I graduated, I had no idea what common law was, and yeah, the same here. And you know, this communication between foreign students and American students would be amazing, because for a lot of reasons, the mindset, of course, and language reasons too, because students, Brazilian lawyers, they're usually like, oh, my English is not so good, people won't understand me, and in the end of the day,
their level of English is pretty high, So I think it's excellent.
Thank you, Bruna. And if you're concerned that your English isn't that good, we'll make that decision for you. And if you do a program
Great point.
like this, either the Summer Institute, the LEI, the LL.M, your English is going to get so much better. And look,
Exactly.
in this globalized world, I'm sure Brazilian lawyers are working with U.S. clients, with U.S. co-counsel, with U.S. opponents all the time. And so learning legal English is actually a really important skill. And I'm just glad that I don't have to learn legal Portuguese.
Bruna, that actually brings up another point about the admissions process, because while we do ask for a TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo score, and our scores that we look for are specific, we're looking on the TOEFL or a 7 on the IELTS, a 120 on the Duolingo. You can still apply if your score is below that. And as Tony mentioned, we will review your application, and we will reach out and interview if we feel that that's warranted. And then talk through this with you. And then there are options. Perhaps you want to do a short-term program first, but don't feel shy about applying
Great point.
If your score is just below our requirement.
Excellent. And last but not least, I've been thinking about taking the Legal English Institute for some time, and it is a 6-month program, and it was only face-to-face in New York. So people would have to spend 6 months in New York. So again, cost and children and your job, etc. So it will be online next year. This year, Tony, I'm sorry. It's going on now, right?
We're doing it online now, and it will be online starting in January. If I had to guess, Bruna, I would say it will be online for August as well, but I don't know what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that I'll have a vision as to whether it should continue online or come back to person. But for January through May, I believe it is 5 months, close to 6, it will definitely be online. And Bruna, nothing would make me happier than to have you and some of your colleagues there.
And my point is, if you're not sure about the LL.M program, if you're not sure your English is good enough, maybe start with these other programs, right? The Legal English Institute and the Summer Institute, and then you can you can have a feel of what it's like.
And by the way, for the Legal English Institute, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Bruna, because if you do the Legal English Institute and you decide to come back and do the LL.M, we'll take that fee that you paid for the Legal English Institute and we'll apply it towards your LL.M.
Really?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you're reminding me of all the things I wanted to talk about. So this is a really great opportunity. If you're thinking of the LL.M, but you're not so sure yet, we will apply. The LEI is $4,000 US. We'll take that amount and we'll apply it towards your LL.M tuition should you return for the LL.M. So we have
amazing news.
That's a new thing. We're realizing that that these are huge investments. We understand that COVID has raised a lot of financial issues, economic issues for people all around the world, and so we want to make it as easy as possible for people to get the training that they want, that they think would be helpful for them.
I'm very happy you mentioned it, because I'm sure people people will really consider taking the Summer Institute first, and I'm sorry, the Legal English Institute first, and then thinking about an LL.M, and if their tuition can go right to the other program, it will be amazing. And I really want to thank you both for being here and for sharing all this information. And Fordham is like, we Brazilians, at least, I'm sure, students all around the world appreciate what Fordham has been doing. I mean, everything started because of COVID, but which is, of course, horrible, terrible, etc. But we're having this great opportunity to, have you guys guiding us and studying at Fordham. And of course, as I said, our dream is to live in New York for some time, but it's not possible for everyone. So thank you very much for putting a lot of effort on trying to make it happen and work for people around the world. And if you could send me all the details, and then later I'll send these details to everyone who applied. I'm sorry, who enrolled for this webinar.
Bruna,
And,
I'm gonna update this PowerPoint a little bit, mainly
great.
responses to your questions, and then which were pretty obvious in retrospect. And I'll send it to you later this evening or first thing tomorrow, and then feel free to distribute it broadly. I think that you've also shared my email and Marty's email with your colleagues, and
It's
so
on YouTube, exactly.
we're here for you, and we're so grateful, Bruna, for giving us this opportunity to share our programs with your audience.
Sorry, one question here from YouTube. Do you have time? Okay. So Sylvia, how many professors will there be for each course? Are you teaching all of them, Tony? I hope so. I hope so too.
No, at the moment, Sylvia, you just made my day, and Bruna, you made my day too. You know, I would love to teach all those courses, and I wish that I had enough knowledge to do that. I'm teaching the introduction to the U.S. legal system, and as of now, that's the only course I'm teaching. When the program gets bigger, I would also like to teach a course on the professional persona, which, as you know, is near and dear to my heart. And as I get closer to retirement, maybe I would take on more teaching if I could give up some other responsibilities.
Please.
But I would love that, because teaching is where my heart is. But for right now, we're going to have one professor for every course. I don't think in the LL.M, I don't think there's any co-taught courses for the moment. But I also know that I think Amadeo Ribeiro, for example, who's teaching competition law, I think he typically brings in some guest speakers. And so it might be that I believe that the professor who's teaching dispute resolution, he's an expert in litigation, but I think he's less of an expert in mediation and arbitration. So I think he's planning to bring in some speakers for that. And my guess is that other faculty members will do that as well. It's going to be, we've got all great faculty though, only really fun, engaging people, because we know that online it's difficult to keep up people's interest. And so we chose excuse me, there's one exception to that. I'm so sorry. Corporate social responsibility is going to be taught by two professors. One is an Italian professor named Paolo Galizzi, who has been at Fordham for about 12 or 14 years. And his colleague, who's also a former LL.M graduate, her name is Emily Smith Ewing. And they've been teaching a variation of this course together for many years. So that's the one exception. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Tony. And Roger, he's sending his greetings to you, Tony. He was my colleague in 2018. And
Roger!
We're still close and we talk, and every time I tell Roger and the other students that you're going to be with us, they're like, oh, I want to watch it. So he's watching us. And yeah, that's it from YouTube. So thank you guys again. So I'll wait for your updated presentation. I'll send everything tomorrow. And I hope to have you here again.
I'm looking forward to that, Bruna.
And I hope you guys have a few Brazilian students enrolled and taking advantage of this online effort, right, that Fordham has been making to provide great education throughout the world. So thank you very much again, and see you soon.
Thank you, Bruna. Thanks to all who were there. Marty, great seeing you again.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Boa noite, obrigada.
Boa noite.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay.